Hello everyone, how are you? Today I will teach you how to make this loop animation in Blender. You can download the blend file for free, link in the description. Let's begin. Delete the default cube. Let's hide these two. I'm gonna model this from the -y viewpoint, add a sphere, and since mochis are not this big, scale it. Right-click, Shade Auto Smooth, go to Edit Mode, in Vertex Selection Mode, select the bottom vertex, go back to our view and enable Proportional Editing. Scale on the Z-axis. You can control the influence with the mouse wheel or with the beige up and beige down keys. Now do the same with the top vertex. And here we have our shape. Go back to Object Mode. Now we need to create the other two mochis. Let's go to the Shading tab. I'm gonna remove these areas to use all the space. Go to Front View, select the object and duplicate it. Escape. Move along the X-axis. Let's duplicate another one. And let's place it. Now to place the camera, first let's show the camera, select it, and remember to be in the -y viewpoint. And let's press Ctrl-Alt-0 to align the camera to our view. I'm gonna move the camera a bit, and of course you could place your camera differently. For the lighting, enable Scene World and Lights. And let's pick the only material we have for our model. Delete the principled BSDF and add a diffuse BSDF node. Add a shader to RGB node. And add a color ramp node. Change it to constant. Let's show the light and change the default light to a sun. Change the strength and remember to be in camera view mode before placing the light and the colors. Move the white color stop and rotate the light until you like the placement of the colors. Remember that one color is going to be our base color and the other one our shadow color. You can also add a texture coordinate and a mapping node to control the placement of the colors a bit more. You could change any of these values, but I'm gonna change the location on the Z-axis. Now let's choose the colors. You don't need to use the same ones as me. You could try different color combinations. Before choosing the rest of the colors, I'm gonna change my color management. I chose standard and medium low contrast. If you'd like, you could add another color stop for the highlights. I will make the highlights differently, so let's delete this color stop. Let's rename the material. And now pick the same material for the other object, but make it a single user copy so we can change the color of only this model. Let's change the name to keep everything organized. And for this one I chose a light yellow color. I'm gonna move this a bit. And now let's do the same for the other one. For the green mochi, I decided to change the placement of the shadow. To get the shadow in the place I wanted it, I changed this color stop and I also changed the mapping values a bit. Of course, these values came after some trial and error, so if you're not happy with the position of your colors, you can experiment with different settings on both the color ramp and the mapping node. Now let's make the gradient outline. Add a new material slot and make a new material. Add a color ramp node, a texture coordinate node, and a mapping node. Then connect the generated socket to the mapping node. Enable back face culling and add a solidify modifier. Enable flip normals, set the material offset to 1 to use the second material we just made. Set this to 0 and choose the thickness you like. To make the object look a bit smoother, let's add a subdivision modifier. And now pick the colors you like. I added a color ramp so I could get a gradient effect for my outline, but you could choose only one color. Let's move the colors a bit. And I'm gonna change the mapping values as well to place the colors exactly where I want them. Select the other object and add a new slot material and choose the material we just used for the pink mochi. Make it a single user copy and rename it. To save some time with the yellow mochi selected, press Shift and select the pink object. Press Ctrl L and choose Copy Modifiers. And now we have the same modifiers with the same settings. Now we can pick the colors for this yellow mochi. As you can see, I chose a pink gradient outline for the pink mochi. So now for the yellow one, I'm gonna go with 2 shades of yellow. And do the same for the green mochi. In my previous video, I used the line art modifier to add the outline, but since I wanted a gradient material as my outline, I chose this method instead, which is called inverted hull. You could also create the outline using freestyle and play with the settings. And we've finished the materials. In the rest of the video, you will see different colors, but these are my final ones. Now it's time to make the highlights. For that, I will add a new grease pencil object. When adding a new grease pencil object, always remember to be in frame 1. Let's rename this default material. I will use a white stroke material. Disable use lights. I'm gonna rename this layer. Go to draw mode, change the brush radius to a smaller one by pressing F, change the stroke placement to surface and change the offset. I will draw from the -Y viewpoint. As you can see, my strength is set to 0.6. If you want a striking white color, you can set the strength to 1. And as you can see, I enabled use pressure for both the strength and the radius since I'm working with a graphic tablet and I like the effect it produces. Draw while pressing Shift to get smoother lines and draw a dot. In edit mode, you can place the stroke. Make sure you disable proportional editing. Choose a stroke selection mode. I want to rotate this one and move the dot a bit. Let's select the stroke again and in sculpt mode, choose only strokes so only the stroke gets modified, not the dot. And by using the thickness tool in subtract mode, you can make the end point a bit thinner so it looks like the start point. Also, if you don't have a graphic tablet, you could use this brush for both the end and the start point so your stroke looks exactly like mine. Let's use the smooth tool. I want to add a subtle glow effect. Make sure you are in render mode so the effect is visible. Change the size so it's a bit more noticeable. The effect is subtle, but it's there. Let's move the strokes a bit more while in camera view mode. A to select all and move. Back to object mode. Duplicate the grease pencil object and escape. In edit mode, press A to select all and place the strokes. Back to object mode, duplicate another grease pencil object and move it in edit mode like we just did with the other ones. And if you'd like, you could parent each stroke to its object. For that, go back to object mode. Select the grease pencil object, press Shift, select the mochi and press Ctrl P and choose parent. And now if you move the mochi, the highlight will move as well. And now the grease pencil object is here. Let's parent the other two. And now let's make the face. Add a new grease pencil object. First, we're gonna make the eyes. We need a fill material. Disable use lights. And in draw mode, we're gonna use the circle tool. We're still in surface by the way, and we're drawing the eyes in camera view mode. Press Shift to get a perfect circle. And make another one. Gonna move it a bit. And the eyes are pretty close to our model, no need to move them any closer, but I do want the eyes to be a bit closer to each other. So let's go to edit mode and move the circles a bit on the x-axis. I'm also gonna scale this one a tiny bit. In a new layer, let's draw the highlights for the eyes. We can use the same material we used for these highlights. And in draw mode, this time I'm gonna use the draw tool. Disable use pressure if you're using a graphic tablet and set the strength to 1 to get an intense white material. Set this one to stroke. Let's make the radius smaller. To give life to the eyes, we can make the highlights move to create a twinkling effect. Add a noise modifier for the highlights layer only. After trying out different settings, let's see how it looks. Now let's make the eyes blink. Go to frame 20. Make sure you are in the highlights layer. Press I and choose Insert a blank keyframe. Duplicate the first keyframe and take it to frame 23. And here we've just duplicated the keyframe for both of our layers, the highlights and the eyes layers. Now go to edit mode and duplicate the eyes keyframe to frame 20. In point selection mode, select the top half of both circles and dissolve. And now we have an open eye in frame 1 and a closed eye in frame 20. In a sculpt mode, using the push brush, I want to move the top of these semi-circles, but as you can see, the brush only pushes the bottom, so what we need to do is, in edit mode, select these 2 points and choose subdivide. Now the other one. Back to sculpt mode, in point selection mode, select these points and move them to the bottom to create a closed eyelid. Smooth a bit. And let's play it. Let's smooth the circles. Before doing it, lock the highlights layer. And since this keyframe doesn't have smooth circles, let's duplicate the first keyframe again. Back to draw mode, add a new layer for the mouth. Move it down and disable use lights. We need a new stroke material. Let's draw on the surface and in camera view mode. You could use the draw tool, but to make a perfect mouth, I'm gonna use the arc tool. M to flip it. Press Shift to make a perfect arc, and before confirming, you can tweak the arc with the manipulator or move the start point. Make a new layer for the cheeks. Move it down. And I want a pink fill material. I used the same material for the 3 mochis, but you could use different colors for each one. If you download the blend file, you'll find 2 other cheek materials. Let's make a circle. Press Shift to get a perfect circle, or don't if you want an asymmetrical one. In edit mode, I'm gonna move it and scale it. Duplicate it, take it to the other side, and we need to correct the second cheek. So let's rotate it first. And now move it towards the model. Let's see how it looks in camera view. Back to top view, let's correct it a bit more precisely. Back to object mode, duplicate the face, escape, and move it towards the yellow mochi and place it. We need to rotate it a bit, but before that, change the origin to geometry. And now let's rotate it. And now duplicate another one and place it. Let's rotate it a bit. I'm gonna rename it to know which face corresponds to each mochi, and I'm gonna change the origin of this grease pencil object to geometry as well. For the animation, add a lattice object. Scale it so it fits perfectly. Raise the resolution. Select the yellow mochi and add a lattice modifier. Pick the lattice object. Select the lattice and in Edit mode, let's deform it with X-ray mode enabled. Move along the Z-axis a bit, back to Object mode, duplicate the lattice object and place it. And duplicate another one. And now add a lattice modifier for the pink and for the green mochi. Go to frame 1 and take the strength from this lattice modifier to 0 and press I to make a keyframe. Move to another frame depending on how slow or fast you want your animation to be. I chose frame 25. Take the strength to 1 and make a keyframe. And now animate the green mochi with the same settings. Strength to 1 in frame 25 and strength to 0 in frame 1. And for the yellow mochi, let's use the inverse values. Strength to 1 in frame 1 and strength to 0 in frame 25. And duplicate the first keyframe to frame 50, so the animation starts and ends in the same way. Do the same for the others. And here we have it. Now we also need to add a lattice modifier for each grease pencil object. Let's start with the face that corresponds to the green mochi. And we also need to animate the modifier. Do the same with the other grease pencil object. And again, let's animate the modifier. Now let's move on to this one. And now do the same with each highlight as well, so the highlights also follow the movement of the lattice modifier. Now let's do the same with this one. And finally, let's do the same with this highlight. And now all the grease pencil objects follow the lattice animation. As you can see, all the mochis blink at the same time. which makes the animation feel a bit mechanical, so let's change that. Select this grease pencil object, lock the mouth, the cheeks and the lattice modifier, so their keyframes don't get moved because we only want to move the eyes and the highlights keyframes. Select all these keyframes. Don't select the ones that are in frame 1 because if we move them, then the strokes will disappear. And now move the keyframes wherever you want the blink to happen. Now we have a closed eye in frame 8 and an open eye in frame 11. Select the other grease pencil object. Again, lock everything in the timeline but the eyes and the highlights layer and move. Now the closed eyes are in frame 28 and the open eyes are in frame 31. And let's do this one more time. Lock these three, select the keyframes and move. So we have frame 33 and frame 36. And now the three eyes blink at different times and that adds a bit of variety. Now let's make the blinking eyes animation repeat, so the characters don't blink just once during our animation. For that, add a time offset modifier to this grease pencil object. Enable custom range. You could choose frame 36, which is where the last keyframe for the eye blink animation is, and that way after frame 36, the eye animation will start all over again every 36 frames. But I actually chose a random number such as 63 to break the monotony a bit. Now let's do the same with this grease pencil object, except this time I'm gonna put 58. And now let's add a time offset modifier to this grease pencil object. This time I chose 38. Let's see how it looks with these random values. As you can see, the eyes blink endlessly now, and we desynchronize the animation of the blinking eyes to break the monotony. The final step to getting a loop animation is to make the lattice modifier go on forever. To do that, go to the graph editor, select the pink mochi, and with the lattice modifier selected, add a cycles modifier. Do the same with the other two meshes. And now the movement continues indefinitely, but the modifiers on the grease pencil objects need a cycles modifier as well. So select this grease pencil object, make sure you unlock the lattice modifier we locked earlier, and add a cycles modifier. Now do the same for this one. Unlock, select it, add a cycles modifier, and let's repeat the process again. We also need to do the same for the highlights. Select the other one, and select the final one. And now all the elements loop and move according to the lattice modifier, and we also have some random blinks. And since frames 1 and 100 have the same lattice modifier value, and I don't want the same keyframe to repeat, I will set my range to 99. But you could set your range with a bigger number because our animation is now an infinite loop that goes on forever. For the background, I added these nodes to make a procedural background. If you like a more in-depth video about procedural backgrounds and what each node does, and even other patterns you can create, you can check this video. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!